Okay, so welcome everyone. Today's session, we're going to have Sarah Lynn. Did I say it correctly?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm always afraid of saying people's name wrong, and I'm a trainer, so sometimes I have to deal with names and very weird names for people. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sure I killed their name. They are just being nice with me saying that. No, but well. So let's just get started. So some announcements that we have here. Already did this the last time. So we're going to have some sessions in Portuguese and others in English. So today, Sarah's session will be totally in Portuguese, correct?
It's going to be in Scottish.
Oh, it's Scottish! Oh my God, no one will understand that. Not even me. Okay, no, but today's, of course, when we have a speaker that is foreign, it's going to be in English, of course. But we're going to try to bring also the Portuguese speakers to the community. So everyone is invited. And if you guys know that you have a good session, or even if you think, I don't know if I have a good session, you have a good session. So just send us an email. And basically, maybe, Pedro, you can share my email and yours if you don't mind, or just mine in the chat. Well, I can write that. I can write here. Just send us an email. Look, yeah. And I'm sure that we will arrange. And if you guys don't feel confident in speaking, we can help. Okay, we can help you feeling more confident. And if the session is not the best session ever, probably it's not going to be. I'm not going to lie, but we will improve over time. And you're sure it's always nice to do this kind of stuff. Okay, so send us email with proposals. We're more than happy to accommodate you guys in one of the next sessions. Already prepping sessions for January, February, March, April, and so on. And so like Sarah knows, we already arranged this session with Sarah for a long time. We like to have basically a good pipeline of sessions over there so that you guys can sign up, etc. Also share about the meetup, okay? Share about the user group. Find your colleagues and, hey, there's this amazing user group. We are like the best user group of Portugal, the best cloud user group in the world, okay? Just go there and just share the message. We really would like to grow our numbers. We're almost 750 on Meetup, but I think we need some more. There's a lot of people that sometimes gets to me, gets to Pedro and says, there is an Azure user group. Oh, so I didn't know. It's like, so people really want to know, but they just don't know. Okay, so what we have more in here. So next sessions will be December, the 9th of December. All this is in the user group meetup page. We're already working on January, and there are some rumors about, oops, this is wrong, okay? This is not a session on, this one is not a session on Azure Container Alphabet. This is what does, okay? But there are like some, okay, there is some rumors that there's going to be a Databricks session for February, okay? Rumors. Sure, Peter? We don't know about anything. I just heard some rumors.
It's cooking. It's cooking.
It's still under the oven, that one. Yeah. And then we would just like to know a little bit better today's speaker. So today we have Sarah, okay, and we just want to ask Sarah a few questions. I'm sure Pedro also has a few questions, but maybe I can start. So Sarah, what is a cloud advocate? Okay, that before we know that's a very fancy name for sure. I would love to have that.
You stole my
title,
question.
But I'm jealous. I'm jealous of having that name. But what does a cloud advocate does?
So I do lots of different things. Some of the kind of objectives that I have is to make sure that our customers and our kind of audience can find the right documentation to make them successful when they're deploying either Azure or maybe even still deploying Windows Server on-prem, and try and fill that gap if people need to find the right documentation. And if there's not the documentation there that they need, then part of my job is to try and fill that hole and create the documentation as well. The Cloud Advocate team at Microsoft is part of the Azure engineering team. So we work closely with the engineers that make the products. So again, feedback is something that we collect, good or bad feedback. Happy to do that. Happy to make that connection with the engineering team and have that conversation between our customers so that hopefully we can make the products better or drive them in the direction that our customers need them. Other things that I do are events like this and try and interact with the community and get to know everybody and have some fun. But yeah, that's kind of a Cloud Advocate in a nutshell.
Okay, so Sarah, because Tiago stole my first question, which was kind of obvious, so I'm going to throw a curveball to you. And
Okay.
I know that you are a STEM ambassador also, so want to talk about that to us?
Yeah, so a STEM ambassador is someone, for those that don't know, because I found that it's not a universal term, which is a weird one, but it's about helping get the next generation into either a science, a technology, an engineering, or a mathematical career. Obviously, my passion is to get the next generation into technology and follow suit. And as a female in IT, I'm an anomaly. I'm even more of an anomaly when you think that I'm working the infrastructure side of IT. There's definitely not a lot of women in that side of it. So I try and speak to schools and the next generation to try and bring them forward and make sure that they are aware that IT isn't just for guys and it isn't just about gaming and being, really good on Xbox or whatever. So yeah, I try to encourage them and make sure that they are aware of all the amazing things that are open to them within IT. And as I'm sure you're all aware, females in the past have done some amazing things in IT, and we don't surface those stories enough. So again, it's just about trying to encourage the next generation to follow suit and follow so that I can at some point hopefully retire.
Well, just think about NASA and all those ladies that did so.
Yeah.
I can't even describe how important that their work was, and they were fairly unknown to the public. So kudos to you for
I
the
think
work.
what will be awesome is that someday in the future those kinds of initiatives will not be needed because it will be parity. That will be an amazing goal, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think doing it like going to schools, etc., is the way to go. Okay, we need to change this, and it needs to be the next generation to basically don't have a gap, because there is no sense into having this gap, to be honest. I never got it why we never had that many women in IT. Now that I work in IT, I get sometimes and there's not nice stories, but it also is our responsibility that we're in the industry to try to basically not have those stories in the future. Okay, I have one last question.
Okay.
So you're from Scotland, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us about what is Scotland, how it is, and why should we visit? After, well, not now, but after COVID.
Scotland is amazing. I love Scotland. I would never move away from Scotland. I love the fact that we can get 4 seasons of weather in the same day. The scenery is amazing. When we do get the good sunny weather, then there's no better place. I genuinely believe that there's no better place to be than Scotland. We're also the home of fantastic whiskey. Scotland is the inventor of whiskey, so and we get lots of rain, so we turn all of that into whiskey. So that's fantastic if you're into that. We also a sport I would normally be playing right now at this time of year, obviously not because of COVID, is curling, which is on the ice rink as well. Another home to we invented that, although I think the Canadians tried to claim that, but it's definitely ours. So yeah, and as we just lost them this week, Sean Connery, the best Bond, 007 that there ever was Scottish. So yeah, there's some fantastic things that come out of Scotland. So
and the father of Indiana Jones. Don't forget that.
Absolutely, yep.
That's a priceless performance. That movie, I love it.
He was a great actor, and especially a great man. So it was sad news this week. Yeah.
Okay, but I think I think I don't have any more questions for Sarah. Well, I have, but we can't do it them now. That will take ages. Okay.
No worries.
But I don't know about you, Pedro. You have some more questions, or can we start?
No, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, so let's give the stage to Sarah.
Cool. Let me share my screen.
I will mute myself now, and I will.
No worries. So tonight I'm going to be talking about starting your data center migration or transformation and how Azure Migrate can actually help you along that journey. Now, we've kind of done an introduction. Usually I introduce myself, but yeah, I am Sarah, Cloud Advocate at Microsoft. And I'm also the founder of the Glasgow Azure user group. If you're ever looking to attend a user group, we will be having another meetup in December virtually. So please do sign up for that as well. Now, I kind of like to introduce a little bit of Scotland into all of my presentations, and I'm going to teach you a little bit of Scottish tonight, so please indulge me. So you might hear the phrase in Scotland, keep the heat, and that actually means stay calm and don't get upset. We also hear haud your wheesht, which is something that my mum always says to me, which is be quiet. I'm pure done in, which is a phrase I sometimes use at conferences once I've been running up and down the different expo halls and running to see everybody's sessions, and it really means I'm tired. So that's what we say when we're tired. You'll hear people say that Scotland is bonny, or you'll hear it described as bonny Scotland. What they're actually meaning is beautiful. So it means beautiful Scotland, and as you've just heard, it's an amazing country. Now, we don't say yes, we actually say I. So if I'm meaning yes, or I agree with something, I'll say I. I say no for no. I also, this is something that gets referred to me, so we is small. I am quite short if you ever meet me. And you might hear me say this during the presentation, and I'll say tin when I'm actually referring to a physical server. So if you take nothing else from away tonight, you've learned some Scottish phrases. Now, going back to the presentation about migrations, we see lots of people moving to Azure for different reasons. This year, the triggers for migration projects have slightly changed, with a lot of people working from home and maybe not utilising or having it hard to run their on-prem data centre and not being able to get to them. But we also see people moving for other reasons. So people might be moving because their data center lease is running out, or hardware is getting old and is constrained by some of the resources, the limited resources, and the fact that parts are no longer available on eBay when it's starting to run out. There's various different reasons for people trying to move away from that on-prem data center up into Azure. Now, regardless of what your trigger is, or what industry you are, what size of organization you are, I always say that there's 4 migration steps that you should really be thinking about and focusing on, and trying to maybe split up your project into these 4 stages. Now, you should be looking at these projects from a technology viewpoint. They are about moving technology from your on-prem environment up into the cloud. However, it's not just about technology. You also have to think about the people element of this project. And I'm not just talking about the IT staff, which they are massively important in this project, but also thinking about the people that use these end technologies. How do the staff within the other departments, how does your customer base actually use these products and interact with them? And I'm going to be talking more about how you work not only with the technology, but the people on this project as well. So the first stage of your migration is the discovery phase. Now, this is often the chicken and egg one that we talk about. So people think about, do we have to do a discovery phase before we strategize, or should we strategize and then do the discovery? For me, it's all about the discovery first. That's the first stage of your migration project and what you should be thinking about. Your discovery project or stage of the project is thinking about what's in your environment. What do you have? What resources are there? How does everything work? Now, I know we should all have amazing documentation in our environments. We should all know exactly what's in our environments. We know exactly how it runs, how it's all interconnected, what that red wire goes to and what that blue wire goes to. But let's face it, there's probably something that we aren't aware of, something that's been snuck in at some point without our knowledge, and the documentation hasn't been upgraded, or we were on annual leave, we were on holiday and someone snuck something in and we've just missed it. So the discovery phase is really key to diving in and making sure you understand exactly what's there and you're catching any of those gotchas that might catch you on later on in the project. Now, the discovery phase isn't just about the technology, like I said, it's about talking to your staff. Talk to your IT staff and understand where they are on their cloud journey. Have they been attending user groups? Have they been learning out of hours about Azure? Are they up to speed with it? And if not, you as an organisation have to think about how you bring them along on that journey, because what you don't want to do is get to a situation where staff don't know how to support things within Azure. You don't want to move your workloads from a supported location and a location that all your staff know about up into the cloud, and suddenly no one knows how to deal with them. No one knows how to secure port 443 within your web app, and they don't know how to deal with backups. That's absolutely not the situation you want to be in. So make sure you're speaking to your staff, and that's part of your discovery phase as well. Now, another phase within this is about talking to the business. Talk to the business and find out how they interact with the technologies that you're about to move. When do they need the technologies to be up? Because like the great example is the payroll application. We all want to get paid at the end of the month. So make sure you're not moving those applications at the end of the month. But what about the other applications? What about, the one that HR use to track, new employees or keep records on your addresses? Do they need that all the time? Can they have an outage? How do they deal with that? And maybe this is an ideal time to potentially look at doing away with a system. Does it really fit the purpose anymore? Is there something you could move to? Have HR had their eye on a new bit of software that they've heard the industry using and potentially want to do that? Then potentially that's a way to do it. So you can decommission that old HR system and introduce something else, and hopefully it will be cloud friendly. So it might be a PaaS solution or a SaaS solution. So make sure those communication channels are open between you and your members of staff, as well as discovering all about the technology and understanding what's in your department. So you should also be thinking about things like, what compliance do I need to think about? What data do I actually store? Do I store PPI data? Am I allowed to store that in the cloud? Those kind of things need to be discovered as well and thought about, as well as the tooling. And we're obviously going to be talking about tooling tonight with Azure Migrate, but there are other tools out there that can help you do this discovery piece, that can really help you from avoiding to having log on every server and do manual commands to find out what TCP ports are going to be used. All those kind of things, these tools can help you figure out. Now, another part of your discovery phase is the cost. So everybody wants to know about the cost within the cloud environment. And this can be a hard one for a lot of organisations because they don't know the cost of running their current data centre. And we are in a model, or we are often in a model on on-prem environments where we spend money every 3 or 5 years on hardware, on software, and we forget about it after that. We just use those bits of hardware that we've bought, and once it runs out, we go and ask for a new budget. We don't think about the things that kind of make our data center run: the electricity, the air conditioning, the security, all those kind of things add up the cost as well. And those costs are included in your Azure costs. So if you're not comparing your on-prem costs with the Azure costs, things are going to look a bit wrong for you. So make sure you're thinking about this and having a look at it. Now, we have a bunch of tools that can help you with this. One of the ones that I recommend is the total cost of ownership tool, and that helps you understand what your cost is. We've taken an average from a lot of our customer base and pulled it into this tool. So you can see I've got 60 servers, they are this size, they have this much disk space, and we'll give you a rough cost of some of the things that it will be charging around it, like maintenance, electricity, the cooling, all of that, to give you a good picture of what your data center costs are, so that when you compare your Azure ones, you're actually comparing apples to apples. Now, if you're not sure where to start with your discovery, what I've done is actually put a checklist together, a checklist that kind of gives you something to guide along. So it gives you a starting point of where to start your discovery and thinking about some of those things that you need to have a look at. So check out that link for the checklist as well. Now, as I said, we're going to be talking about tooling tonight, and Azure Migrate is probably one of my favourite tools within Azure. And a lot of people don't realise that it's actually been around since September 2017 when it was announced at Ignite. And ever since then, as you can see from this timeline, the product group have really taken on board the feedback that everybody has given them and added on all the functionality and really made it the hub for your data centre migration. Now, the hub for data centre migration is a very marketing term, but it's really true, because what Azure Migrate can offer you is it can really deal with all of those key migration scenarios that you have. So moving your servers, moving your desktops, moving your data, so that raw data that you have stored on SANs, moving your websites, moving your SQL databases. It can cover all of those assessment and migration scenarios that you might have. Now, as I said, it can do discovery, it can do assessment, and it can do migration. So again, it's a tool that you can use throughout the whole journey of your migration project. Now, it's not just the Microsoft tools that we offer. What we've done is we've partnered with a bunch of third-party people and brought their tooling into the Azure portal. So if you wanted to use a mix of different tools, so maybe you wanted to use Azure Migrate for the discovery and then one of the third-party tools for migration, you can do that. And you can do that straight from the Azure portal. We can leverage all of that. And again, you don't have to go off into another website and remember another address and have another bookmark and have another password. All of it's done within the Azure portal. So it really makes it that central location for your migration project, and you hopefully don't get lost on the way. Now, we announced a bunch of new things at Ignite. I just want to show you the slide and kind of make you aware of some of the features and the functionality that we brought across. One of the new ones that I think is pretty cool is that we've now got the capability to discover your on-prem environment and compare what it would look like within the Azure VMware solution that we announced at Ignite as well. So if you've got a VMware environment on-prem and you want to keep within that VMware ecosystem, you can use Azure Migrate to assess how it would look if you were to move into our VMware environment within Azure as well. So that's a pretty cool solution that we have, and hopefully we'll get additional functionality along the way on that one. And the team are also working on a product that can help you take your .NET web applications to Azure Kubernetes systems as well. So again, that's another thing to have a look at if you've got some legacy solutions and you want to move to Kubernetes. There's also something that they released as well that I think is pretty cool, although it's pretty geeky that I enjoy this. They've actually done some Power BI and PowerShell, so you can take some of the data that you're getting and collecting from Azure Migrate and now put it into Power BI. Now, I know a lot of customers that did this themselves. They took the data from Azure Migrate and then put it in their own Power BI templates, but we've now got some templates that you can use yourself if you want to go down that route. So you can start to visualize the data and look at it from in Power BI if that's something your organization is familiar with and prefers for their visualizations. Now, I've talked a ton, so let's have a look at a demo of what Azure Migrate actually does when it discovers within your environment. So we're in the Azure portal and we're in the Azure Migrate Blade, and we're going to have a look at what some of the data has been collected around the environment that we've set it off to assess. Now, you can do this with appliances. So there's appliances you have to install within your environment. And there's also an agentless way that you can do some of this discovery, and there is an agent for other environments. It depends on what your environment is, whether you can go down that agentless or agent route. What you can see here is we've discovered a bunch of servers. I think it was 30,000 odd servers. And what you can see here is we've got the name of the server, some of the common information you would expect us to be discovering, you know, what operating system, how much memory it's got, IP addresses, all of that kind of stuff that you really need to know to understand your environment. We can change the view. We've got the ability to change some of the columns and change what we need to see if we've gone a different view. This is the kind of default view that you get. When we start to drill into this, what we can have a look at is really understanding some of the applications. So say you didn't know what some of these servers were, the names might not mean anything to you. Again, it might be a server that you didn't know existed within your environment. With the application discovery, what we can do is maybe try and decide or discover what that server is. And you can see in here, we've got an application inventory. So we've got some of the things that have been installed on that server. You know, we've got SQL and we've got SharePoint here. So maybe we're going to make a guess that it's a SharePoint server hosting something within our environment. But again, it gives you a clue as to what it is and what's been running in that environment so that you can understand whether you want to lift and shift it as a server or maybe re-architect it into a PaaS or SaaS solution. We've also got the roles and features from within the server as well. So again, that can maybe help you decide what that server does and how you will migrate it. However, what we want to have a look at is the cost and whether our servers are actually available or supported if we want to move them into Azure. And that's where creating one of these assessment reports can actually help you as well. So if we pick one that we've made ready, we can have a look at it. Now, the eagle eye among you will notice that we are doing one on a performance-based analysis, and we have different ways of doing that. There's a performance-based one, and there's also an as-is report that you want. Now, the as-is will give you sizing based on the sizing that you already have on on-prem environment. So if your server is 2 gig of memory and 2 cores, it will give you that relevant size within Azure. The performance-based report will tell you about how much your server is actually using. So if you've oversized or undersized your server on-prem, Azure Migrate will assess it for a given period and then make a suggestion for you. So it will try and right-size your virtual machine when you move it into Azure. Now, within the report, what we get is a lot of information for it as well. So if we find the right bit. So when we go back into this assessment report, we are given some information. We're given the sizing information around it. We're also given the readiness for this report as well. And this can be based on, you know, is that operating system of that server supported? Is it not supported? You know, some of the legacy stuff that we're running, you know, if you're still running something like Windows Server 2000, 2003, hopefully you're not running any of that, would obviously be unsupported because you don't support that in Azure. Some of the Linux versions of the operating systems come flagged as ready with conditions. And that just means that, yes, we support Linux, but you need to dive in and check that the version number of Linux that you're running is actually supported within Azure, because we do have some nuances in that area as well. But that's really what it is, and it's reminding you to go and check that and make sure you're not making an assumption. Like I've had some customers, unfortunately, assume that we support every Windows operating system and every Linux operating system out there. So just a little checker and a little minder for you to go and do some research as well. So that's kind of what the assessment does and what it looks like and what data it's gathering. So hopefully it's given you a good place to start and having a look further down the line of what you're going to actually do with your project. So now that you've gathered... Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you prefer to answer questions during the presentation or at the end.
I can take them now. Sorry, I just can't see them because of the...
Okay, I will. We have here a question from Syed. He's asking if Azure VMware solution for VMware integration on-prem, is there any requirement, dependency for the existing VMware environment?
To assess it, not really. If you're looking to migrate it, there probably is a bunch of kind of assumptions and prerequisites you have to go through. I don't know off the top of my head what all of those are, but yeah, my colleague Shannon is amazing at all of that, so I'll volunteer her to come and do a presentation if you guys want on VMware solution. But to do the assessment, not really. It just plugs into your vCenter server. So as long as you can give it read access to your vCenter server to collect the data, then it'll collect the data for you and give you an idea.
Okay, Sarah, thanks for the question.
No worries. So yeah, so once you've done that discovery, your next phase on the project should be the assessment phase. And this is the phase where you're going to look at all the data that you've gathered and actually start to plan what your migration looks like. So are you going to go with a lift and shift? So just take everything as VMs and put them up into Azure. Are you going to look at PaaS solutions, SaaS solutions, keeping something on-prem, go with a hybrid solution? Maybe you could be looking at Azure Stack. There's a whole different variety of options. There's no right or wrong answer for this, to be honest. It's what works for your workloads and what works for your organization and where you're actually going. What's driving your migration? Is it just getting out of your data center by a certain time? Maybe you have to do a lift and shift. I've had customers that have had to do that. In the UK, we had the government building a railway line through a data centre, and they had a set time they had to be out of. They had no choice. They couldn't fight it. They just had to be out of that data centre. So they just lifted and shifted everything as a server up into Azure. So that was the way they had to go. They're now re-architecting everything to make advantage of the cloud. But, you know, it depends on what's your goals and what's your triggers and what works for your organisation. But at the assessment phase, you need to start planning that, start understanding how you're going to do some things within the cloud as well. You also start to look at things like governance and how you're going to operate within Azure as well. So thinking about the cloud adoption framework, which is something we have from Microsoft Azure, thinking about what you're going to do for your security baseline. How do you need to secure it? If you have things like PPI data, you need to make sure that that's secure. How are you going to manage your resources? Who's going to manage your resources? Are you changing your operating model within the cloud? How are you going to deploy all of these resources? Are you going to use the Azure portal? Are you going to use a CLI command? Going to go Terraform? These are the kind of things that you need to start thinking about at the assessment phase as well. There's lots of decision points that you need to make. The cloud adoption framework can really help you along that journey, can really help you understand what you need to think about and how you need to think about those things as well, and really give you some guidance to make those decisions. We've also got things like roles and responsibilities. Who's looking after all of these different resources? Who's going to be in charge of them? How are you going to split up that? Maybe traditionally your infrastructure team looked after everything. Your developers had no access to anything and they had to go through the infrastructure team. Is that necessarily the way you want to run things in the cloud, or do you want to split it up so that the infrastructure people look after the infrastructure, your developers have access to some of that infrastructure and they can deploy onto that, and it's their remit to have a look at all of that? So again, it's a great time to maybe redesign your departments and have a think about how you're going to move forward when you're moving to the cloud as well. Now, once you've made all those decisions and have them all locked in and approved and you're going forward, the next stage is the migrate stage. And this is where it actually kind of gets fun. This is when you're actually starting to move some of those workloads, starting to get to play and deploy those workloads into Azure. It can be quite daunting, and it can take quite a long time to do this. If you're a large organisation, it definitely isn't going to happen over the course of one weekend. Probably going to be lots of out of hours and lots of work to be done around this, but whatever happens, just go with it. Learn as you go with each of these workloads that you migrate. Definitely don't migrate your most critical workload first. Again, stay well clear of that payroll application unless you really have a burning need to move that as your first workload. You want to start with something small, something that's not going to be critical to the business if you accidentally move it and something goes wrong. You want to build up your confidence and your processes till you get to those mission critical applications. So it's all about doing an iterative process around all of this. Start to build up your confidence and then move up to those mission critical applications. Make sure you're communicating internally within your IT department. So if you move a workload at 2 AM in the morning, go and finish that, are confident with the migration, and then you go off to bed and you hand over to the day shift, and then something goes wrong, you may need to make sure you have that communication line in so that they know that was the workload that you were moving, and they now have the new procedures that you've already written and documented for them to follow, rather than the old procedures, because you don't want them running into your data center, pressing on the old server, and suddenly you've got your old workload and old data running, and then the one on the cloud comes back up as well, because that's going to give you more headaches and it's going to look really bad for your project as well. So again, keep those communication lines open internally within your department, and also keep them open with your business as well. Again, keep them in the loop with what's happening and why you're doing everything, and why potentially things will look different for them in the morning. Now, as I said, this is an iterative process, so you should be learning as you go throughout of it, updating your documentation, maybe even starting to script and automate processes as you build your confidence up and you start to know the repeatable steps that you might have. One of them could be if you're moving from a VMware environment into just Azure, you might want to uninstall that VMware agent that runs on all of your servers. So you can maybe script that so that it happens and you're not having to manually do that. Scripting as well can take out some of the human element. So it can take out those mistakes that you might make. You might click the wrong box, or click the right box, or not click the right box, depending on, you know, where your brain is at 2 AM in the morning, if that's when you're having to do your migration. So learn as you go and try and script and automate things as you go as well. Azure Migrate can help you with this migration if you're moving your servers up into the cloud. As I said, we have an agent version and we have an agentless version, again, depending on how you're moving and what you're moving. But we can really move anything. So we can move your physical servers, we can move your VMware servers, we can move your Hyper-V servers. We can even move your cloud servers that are living on other clouds. So if you have servers running on GCP or AWS, we can move them as well. And what we'll show you in the demo in a wee bit is how you can test those migrations without actually impacting your production environment. So again, you can refine your processes and know what's happening before you actually hit the go button. Something I get asked all the time is Azure Site Recovery versus Azure Migrate. And before, we used to recommend that Azure Site Recovery was the tool you use to do your migration. However, we're firmly in that camp now where Azure Migrate is the tool you should be using for your migration. Azure Site Recovery, or ASR, is our disaster recovery tool, and that helps you mitigate things that go wrong within the data center or on your on-prem data center. Azure Migrate is a tool that helps you for your migration. So there's a clear-cut distinction between the two now, and yeah, Azure Migrate is the tool you'll be using if you're doing a migration project. So let's dive into a demo, because I've done tons of talking and tons of PowerPoints. So this migration demo is showing you lifting some servers from on-prem and taking them up into Azure. Now, it is a video because this process took about 24 hours for us to replicate the servers from on-prem up into Azure, and we're definitely not going to be waiting around for that. So the first stage is for us to discover our environment again, to just make that connection about what we're actually looking for. So we're looking for some Hyper-V servers on-prem that we're going to be moving up into Azure. So it gives us an option to download some software as well. So what we're going to do is download that software that will help us do the migration, and we're going to put it on one of our on-prem servers. It can be a dedicated server, it could be repurposing a server, whatever you need it to be. Make sure you check out the prerequisites, because there are some prerequisites around how big the server needs to be. What we're doing here is making that connection between our on-prem environment and our Azure subscription. So where do we want everything to be moved to when we actually do the migration? It's just making that secure connection between on-prem and the cloud. And you can see it takes a wee while to set up, but we've sped that up so as we can get through this quite quickly. Now that we've got the on-prem stuff set up, we go back into the Azure portal, and what we want to do is just make that connection again and double sure that everything's secure and connected and everything's going to go to the right place within Azure when we start the migration. Now that we've done the kind of discovery and it's set it up, what we want to start to do now is actually start to replicate those servers. So it's discovered 4 servers on-prem that we could potentially replicate. When we have a look at this, you'll see that one of the servers is actually the replication or migration tool. We're not going to be replicating that up because it's served its purpose. We're going to take those 3 servers that are on that Hyper-V server though. So when we start the replication, we're asked about things like what kind of server does these servers live on? So it's a Hyper-V server in this case. We have the option to take the settings that the Azure Migrate assessment tool picked out. So if you've done a performance-based assessment, what you can do is start to right-size these virtual machines when you actually move them up into the cloud, so you don't have to resize them yourself. Any of the recommendation the report has given you can be taken through into the migration stage. Now, we're now talking about where we're going to move these servers. So what resource group are we using? What's our replication storage account? What's the virtual network? What's the subnet? All of this, unfortunately, needs to be set up before you start the replication. So if you get halfway along this wizard and you don't have your subnet set up, you're going to have to go back and set all of that up in order to do the migration. Now here they have the stage where we could actually tweak it even more if we weren't listening to the the assessment report. We can change the disk size, we can change the VM size, we can put it into availability sets. We now have capabilities to even put it into availability zones as well during migration. So lots of different things that you can configure here and control about what happens when you move them into Azure. So now we've defined all the settings, we let it run and do the replication. The replication can take a while. Like I said, it took about 24 hours for these 3 virtual machines to replicate. If you have a larger environment with more virtual machines, it's obviously going to take a lot longer. So it's definitely something to think about and make sure you plan ahead. We do have tools that can help you understand how fast the replication can happen. You can also control the QoS so that the replication doesn't steal all of your bandwidth as well. Now what we're doing here is we're actually going to test our migration. So we're going to test what's happened when we bring these virtual machines into Azure. And this is not going to affect our production environment. We're going to be putting them into a kind of separate area with a different name, but there'll be normal servers within Azure once we do this. So we set all of this up. We do each individual server that we want to bring across, and what it does is it starts to bring that server into, a normal server that we can log on into Azure. Now again, it can take a few minutes for this to happen. If you have lots of servers, if you have big servers, it's going to take a wee bit longer to do all of that, but it shouldn't be too long, this process. Once they've all started up, what we can actually do is go into them and log into them and see how they are. So we can see if there's things that we need to uninstall, there's things that we need to reinstall, if the replication has worked the way we thought it did, has all the data that we need been collected. You can see here the servers are there within Azure. They've got a dash test name appended to them, so we can keep them separate from our production environment. They're completely separate. Got a different name, but we can log on to them, and like I say, we can play with them, we can understand the processes, we can write our change request, we could even start to write that script of what we need to do if there's anything we need to do for the servers. Now, once you've played with them, you've understood the process, what you want to do is clean them up, because the last thing you want to do is leave them running and actually be charged for them. Even though they're just test VMs, you will be getting charged for that compute storage that you're using. So once you're finished with the testing, make sure you're cleaning them up and the process so that they're not there, they're not extra confusion, and they're not extra cost for you as well. So the process of cleaning them up is a bit process driven. You have to click on each of the servers and you have to go through all of them and write little notes. But once you've done that, you can move ahead to the migration stage. And this is when you're ready to actually migrate the workloads and make them production within the cloud. You do have the option to shut down the servers on-prem from the location, so that potentially you're not having people write to that as you're bringing up the new server in Azure. Again, it's entirely up to you how you use these steps. You might be able to do that, you might not be able to do that, but you'll have to think about what's happened between switching that server off or migrating it, and then if there's any data replication you need to bring across manually yourself. But you can see here the servers are now live within Azure. They're just a normal Azure virtual machine with the usual kind of network adapters attached to them, and you can start to log into them and they can be your production environments. Hopefully that's given you a good insight as to what the process is and how you can use it, and some of the capabilities within Azure Migrate. But as I said, it took about 24 hours for that process to actually happen, so we managed to speed it up within a few minutes. Now, once you're actually in to Azure and your workloads are all in Azure, we can start to think about how we manage those workloads going forward. Arguably, this is a stage that is probably going to have to go throughout the project with you, but it's also going to be something that's a business as usual activity for you. You need to make sure that you're updating your procedures, updating your documentation. Everything now reflects the fact that you're in the cloud and there's something there in the cloud, and you have to work with that there. You should also be thinking about staff training. Like I said at the start, you don't want to be in a position where people don't know how Azure works and all your workloads are residing in that area. And we're definitely not in the stage where you can send people off to train for 1 week. They do that intense training course, set the certification, and then they're up to date for the next 3 or 5 years, depending on the product life cycle. Azure constantly changes. We constantly have to be training on it and keeping up to date with it. So make sure you are driving the procedures and the behaviour within your staff to keep up with their training once you're now in Azure. You know, maybe you need to look at giving them a dedicated day, a month, where they can go off and just do some training of their own accord and have a look at it that way. But you should be thinking about your training and what's going to happen going forward with your team as well. This is also a stage where you can maybe start to think about, right, we're now in Azure, we're now getting familiar with it. Maybe in 6 months' time, we're starting to re-architect something. So instead of it being a virtual machine, maybe we want to start the process of looking at it being a SaaS implementation or a PaaS implementation. There's constant ways you could maybe innovate with some of the cloud products that we have. Now, also within this management stage, you're starting to think about cost management. Now, it shouldn't just be something that IT look after, it should be a team sport. So it should be everybody in your organisation really thinking about cost management. We've moved away from, again, the spending maybe every 3 or 5 years on large equipment and large hardware budgets, but we're now spending daily, weekly, monthly, even minutes, depending on how the services within Azure are being charged. So we need to keep an eye on that budget. However, like I said, it shouldn't be something just IT focus on, and it shouldn't be something you focus on nearly on a day-to-day basis. It should be something you maybe address maybe every month or every quarter, so you've got a good sense of the data and you can understand what the trends are and why things are happening. If you focus on it too much, then you'll get stuck. I've seen customers unfortunately get stuck where they look at cost every week, have a weekly review, and they just get stuck. They end up being cost management teams instead of IT teams and running the normal business as usual stuff you need to do. So again, cost management is important, but it shouldn't be your only focus as well. Now this slide is a fun one. It kind of depicts your migration journey and how it isn't linear. Some things are going to catch you out. You may be going to run out of budget. Unfortunately, I've seen some companies run out of budget midway through the migration project and had to pivot and kind of change what their goals are and how they do things going forward. You might hit something that you aren't skilled on, so you don't have the necessary skills to actually implement, or something's changed and you need to stop the project and go and learn about it and then start again. There's various different things that might throw you off the migration path. However, please don't be daunted by it. At the end of the day, it is kind of worthwhile doing, and lots of customers have went through the pain and are now reaping the benefits of being in the cloud. In terms of key learnings and summarising some of the stuff that I've been talking about today, make sure you know what success looks like. Where's your end goal and when can you end this project? You know, if it's just to be out of that data centre before the lease runs out, that's a great goal to have, and you can work towards that. So if something does go wrong, you're still working towards that goal and you can still see that clear objective for your team. Make sure you include the business within every step. They are key to how this works. They are the end users of your products 9 times out of 10. So make sure they're included and they're happy with what's happening as well. Script and automate where you can to take out of those human elements, human errors that might happen within the project, and try and make it as smooth as possible. I've talked about Azure Migrate as a tool that can help you with discovery and assessment and the migration. It's not the only tool out there, so make sure you're picking the right one for your organisation. I've seen some companies pick the wrong one and had to redo what they've done. So they have to do a discovery twice with 2 different tools because they picked the wrong one. So make sure you're evaluating all the tools available to you and picking the one that suits your organisation. And try and look after your budgets. I have had customers again who have run out of budget within 6-12 months of actually being in the cloud, and it should have been a budget for 2 years. So make sure you're matching, looking after your spend and understanding the trends as well. Now, if you're looking for more information, the Azure Migration Centre is a great place to start. It's got information about migrations. It's got more information about the tools. We've got some partner recommendations. So if you don't want to embark on a migration yourself, there are some Microsoft partners that dedicate themselves to migrations. So they can absolutely help you and guide you along that way as well. The Cloud Adoption Framework is a massive, great resource that can help you with your migration journey, regardless of if you're already on that migration journey or whether you're midway through it, or even if you think you've maybe finished that migration journey. There's lots of resources that can help you, even just little gems like knowing the naming conventions that work within Azure that can be applied to your resources are all within the Cloud Adoption Framework. The Azure Architecture Centre is a great place to bookmark and have a look at. We have great architectural diagrams and references from things like mixed reality, AI, migration, IoT. There's lots of different things there that can help you show how all of our solutions work together and how you can start to architect based on cloud architecture and maybe not that on-prem architecture that you're used to. Now, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really do appreciate it. I've talked a lot and I've talked a lot about resources. I've put all of the resources I mentioned in one place, so you can go to that URL and find all the resources if you want to check up more things. But hopefully we've got some time for questions. And if you don't ask a question right now, my contact details are also on screen if you want to reach out. But thank you. Hopefully this has been useful for you. But yeah, thank you again.
Okay, Sarah. So thank you for this talk. Actually, I was part of the guys that tested the first Azure Migrate. At that time, they only had VMware migration, not Hyper-V. I was one of the first to actually test with Hyper-V. So
that's pretty cool.
It's cool to see how much this tool has evolved. I have a question for you. If I remember correctly, you used to have an agent-based dependency mapping, right? Is this still available on the tool?
Yep, so the agent one, I believe, is still relevant if you have Hyper-V environments or you have a physical environment you want to assess. We have agentless for our VMware environments. The agent basically just interrogates your server for what's happening. With the agentless one, what it does is actually interrogate your vCenter server. So it kind of although there's a small overhead using the agent, there's no overhead to your actual servers with the agentless one because all the overhead is taken by your vCenter server. So yeah, hopefully that clears that up.
Okay.
So we have more questions for Sarah. By the way, Sarah, it was an amazing session. Loved it.
Thank you.
It was really cool. Thank you for having.
We need to teach Sarah some Portuguese words.
Yeah.
Especially some from my city, from the north. She's more related to us.
That's not good, Sarah, by the way.
The north.
That's never good. If you say some Portuguese person that is from the north of Portugal trying to teach you something like words and things like that, just run away.
Okay.
Just a piece of advice. And so, do we have questions? No?
I think so. So
We had some questions during the presentation, so
yeah.
Okay.
It's actually cool that you chosen this topic, because I'm going to do something similar next week, and it's good to have some ideas also.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is a very cool topic for me for a long time.
No, it is, and when I show this to customers, they're like, "Oh, okay." It's like they really demystify a little bit more the effort, what it is to migrate servers to Azure. So yeah, it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
so I think Pedro says good session. Thank you. Alexandre say thank you. So I think we can do the closing. But once again, Sarah, thank you very much for having here. It was a pleasure and an honor. Next event, it will be on December the 9th. We did on purpose, but we're also going to have another FTE from Microsoft. It's going to be Peter the Tender, and Peter is going to talk about Azure Container Alphabet Soup. Basically, it's going to talk about containers, okay, and all the stuff that we can run in containers. So if you didn't sign up for that, sign up for that. It will be always that one. Also, it will be in English. And we also have on the 21st of November, it's not Azure, but there's one guy that's going to talk about Azure functions there. So watch out for that one. We have the Microsoft 365 Developer Bootcamp that you can also attend. So if you didn't sign up, try to get your tickets, okay, as soon as possible, because we have limited seating on that, even if it's virtual. And you have the link here if you want. And basically, I think there are like 20 tickets available only or something like that right now. Okay, so watch out for that. It's a full Saturday, and we're going to have 6 speakers. I think it's 6. Yeah, if it's not 6, I think it's 5 or 6, whatever. Okay, that they're going to talk about more on the developer bits of Microsoft 365, but it's always a nice one. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. And Sarah, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Sarah.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.